The blood-stained letter trembled in Willow Nash's hands as she stood on the dusty main street of Kelton, Utah Territory, in 1876. The reality of her husband's death finally sinking in after weeks of denial. The mining accident had claimed Jacob's life, leaving her alone with their 3 daughters in a town that valued sons above all else, especially in her father-in-law's eyes. "You failed him," Jeremiah Nash had spat at her just that morning, his weathered face twisted with contempt. 3 girls and not a single son to carry on the Nash name. My boy deserved better. Willow clutched the letter tighter, her knuckles turning white. In the 6 years she'd been married to Jacob, she'd borne him 3 healthy daughters, Abigail, Emma, and little Sarah, just 10 months old. Jacob had loved his girls fiercely, never once complaining about the lack of a son, but his father had made his disappointment known at every opportunity. Since Jacob's death 3 months ago, Jeremiah's hostility had intensified. He controlled the family finances, the small house she lived in, and increasingly her life. The bruises on her wrists from yesterday's confrontation were still visible, yellowing reminders of his rage when she'd suggested selling some of Jacob's belongings to make ends meet. "Mrs. Nash." A deep voice startled her from her thoughts. Willow quickly tucked the letter into her pocket and turned to find Sheriff Miller regarding her with concern. "Are you all right, madam? You've been standing here for quite some time." She forced a smile. "I'm fine, thank you, just thinking." The sheriff nodded, though his eyes betrayed his disbelief. "If you ever need anything, my door is always open. Thank you." She watched him walk away, knowing she could never tell him the truth. Jeremiah Nash was one of the most respected men in Kelton, a founding member of the town council. No one would believe he was capable of cruelty. Willow adjusted her bonnet and continued toward Granger's general store. Emma needed new shoes, and they were running low on flour. She'd have to be careful with their meager funds. Jeremiah's monthly allowance barely covered necessities. The bell above the door jingled as she entered the store. Mrs. Granger greeted her with a sympathetic smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Nash. How are your girls today?" "They're well, thank you. Abigail is watching her sisters while I run errands. Such a responsible child at only 5. "You've raised them wonderfully." Willow smiled, grateful for the kind words. "I need some flour and sugar, please, and if you have any children's shoes that might fit Emma." As Mrs. Granger gathered her items, the store door opened again. Willow turned to see a tall stranger enter, removing his hat as he stepped inside. His clothes were dusty from the trail, and the revolver on his hip marked him as a man accustomed to the dangers of the frontier. Despite the trail dirt, there was something striking about him. Perhaps it was the quiet confidence in his posture or the sharp intelligence in his blue eyes as they briefly met hers. "Good morning, ladies," he said with a nod, his voice carrying a slight southern accent. "Welcome to Kelton, Mrs." Granger responded cheerfully. "You're new in town. Just arrived. Name's Nathan Archer." He approached the counter, standing a respectful distance from Willow, looking for work and a place to stay. "There's rooms above the saloon," Mrs. Granger offered. "As for work, the Anderson Ranch might be hiring. They're always looking for good hands this time of year." "Much obliged for the information." Willow kept her eyes down, focusing on counting out her coins for the purchases. She was acutely aware of the stranger's presence beside her, the faint scent of leather and horses clinging to his clothes. "That'll be $1.35, Mrs. Granger told her. Willow's heart sank as she counted her money again. She was 15 cents short. "I'm sorry, I'll have to leave the sugar, please allow me," the stranger Nathan said, placing a quarter on the counter. "Oh no, I couldn't," Willow protested. "I insist, madam. Consider it my way of introducing myself to the community." Before she could object further, Mrs. Granger had already accepted the coin and was packaging the sugar. Willow felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Thank you, Mr. Archer, that's very kind." "Not at all, Mrs. Nash, Willow Nash, Mrs. Nash." He nodded, a small smile softening his features. "It's a pleasure to meet you." As Willow gathered her purchases, preparing to leave, the door burst open again. Jeremiah Nash strode in, his imposing figure seeming to fill the small store. His eyes narrowed when he saw Willow speaking with a stranger. "Willow, I've been looking all over for you," he snapped. "The girls are crying and no one's tending to them." "I left them with Abigail just a half hour ago," Willow replied, confusion evident in her voice. "They were fine. Are you calling me a liar?" Jeremiah's voice dropped dangerously low. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into the same spot he'd bruised yesterday. Willow winced but didn't pull away, knowing it would only anger him further. "No, I'm just surprised. I'll come right away." Nathan Archer had gone still, his blue eyes taking in the scene with keen assessment. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice polite but firm. "I believe you're hurting the lady." Jeremiah turned his glare on Nathan. "This is family business, stranger. I suggest you mind your own." "When a man manhandles a woman in public, it becomes everyone's business," Nathan replied evenly. A tense silence filled the store. Mrs. Granger busied herself behind the counter, pretending not to notice the confrontation. Jeremiah's grip tightened momentarily before he released Willow's arm. "Come along, Willow. Now." He turned and stormed out of the store without a backward glance. Willow quickly gathered her packages, mortification burning her cheeks. "Thank you again, Mr. Archer," she murmured, unable to meet his eyes. "Mrs. Nash," Nathan called softly as she reached the door. "If you ever need help." She paused, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. For a brief moment, she considered telling him everything about Jeremiah's escalating cruelty, about how trapped she felt, about her fear for her daughters. But Jeremiah was waiting outside, and she had the girls to protect. "You're very kind, Mr. Archer, but we're managing fine." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue as she hurried out to where her father-in-law waited, his face dark with suppressed anger. "Who was that man?" Jeremiah demanded as they walked briskly down the street toward home. "Just a newcomer to town. I didn't speak with him beyond pleasantries." "Don't think I didn't see how he looked at you. A decent widow wouldn't encourage such attention." "I didn't encourage anything," Willow protested. Jeremiah stopped abruptly, turning to face her in the middle of the street. Several passers-by glanced their way, but quickly averted their eyes, unwilling to involve themselves. "My son has been gone only 3 months, and already you dishonor his memory." His voice was low but cutting. "Perhaps I was too lenient in allowing you to keep the girls." A proper mother would have given Jacob a son. The familiar accusation sliced through Willow like a knife. "I loved Jacob with all my heart. I would have given anything to bear him a son, but God blessed us with daughters instead." "God didn't bless you." "He cursed my boy with a barren wife, barren of sons at least." Willow clutched her packages tighter, fighting back tears. "The girls are waiting. We should go." Jeremiah's expression hardened further. "Yes, we should, and tonight we'll discuss your future. I've been in correspondence with Mr. Howard from Cedar City. He's a widower with grown sons who needs a housekeeper and is willing to take on a woman with daughters." Willow's blood ran cold. "You want to send me away from Jacob's home, from his daughters? They're Nash girls. They belong with the Nash family. You, however." He left the implication hanging in the air between them. "I won't leave my children," Willow said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror gripping her heart. Jeremiah's smile was cruel. "We'll see about that. Now come along." As they resumed walking, Willow's mind raced frantically. She had no money of her own, no family to turn to. Her parents had died years ago and her only sister lived in Boston, too far to reach without funds. Jacob had left everything to his father's management, trusting the older man to care for his family in his absence. How naive they had both been. When they reached the small house at the edge of town, Abigail met them at the door, her young face pinched with worry. "Mama, we're fine. Grandfather said you were lost, but I told him you just went to the store." Willow knelt and embraced her eldest daughter, shooting a quick glance at Jeremiah, who merely shrugged, unapologetic for his lie. "I'm here now, sweetheart. Where are your sisters? Emma's drawing and Sarah's sleeping." "Good girl. Why don't you help me put these groceries away?" As Abigail skipped ahead into the kitchen, Jeremiah caught Willow's arm once more. 8 o'clock. My house. We'll finalize arrangements with Mr. Howard. His voice brooked no argument as he released her and departed without saying goodbye to his granddaughter. Willow stood frozen in the doorway, watching his retreating figure with mounting despair. If she refused to go to Cedar City, would he really separate her from her children? The thought was unbearable. Yet as she closed the door and turned to find Abigail waiting expectantly in the kitchen, Willow knew she couldn't surrender without a fight. Somehow, she had to find a way to keep her family together and away from Jeremiah Nash's cruel influence. The question was, how? The afternoon passed in a blur of domestic tasks. Willow baked bread, mended clothes, and played with the girls, all while her mind churned with desperate plans. None seemed viable. Without money, she couldn't flee. Without legal standing, she couldn't fight for custody. Jacobs had left everything in his father's hands until the girls came of age. By evening, as she put the children to bed, Willow had reached a grim resolution. She would confront Jeremiah directly, appeal to whatever familial feeling might remain in his heart. Surely he wouldn't truly separate his son's children from their mother. "Tell us a story, Mama," Abigail requested as Willow tucked the blanket around her and Emma. "Which one would you like to hear?" "The one about the brave knight who rescued the princess," Emma piped up. Willow smiled sadly. Once upon a time, there lived a princess who was imprisoned in a tower by an evil sorcerer. As she wove the familiar tale, Willow's thoughts drifted to the stranger at the store, Nathan Archer, with his kind eyes, and offered help. In another life, perhaps she might have had the courage to accept such assistance, but reality afforded no such luxuries. No knight would rescue her. She had to find her own way out of this tower. After kissing the girls goodnight, Willow checked on baby Sarah, sleeping peacefully in her cradle. She brushed a gentle finger over her youngest daughter's soft cheek, her heart constricting with fierce love and protective determination. "I won't let him separate us," she whispered. "I promise." At 7:45, Willow asked Mrs. Peterson, their elderly neighbor, to listen for the children. Then, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders, she set out for Jeremiah's grand house on the hill overlooking Kelton. The evening air was cool, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Willow walked briskly, rehearsing arguments in her mind, searching for words that might penetrate Jeremiah's hardened heart. She was so preoccupied that she didn't notice the figure leaning against the hitching post outside the mercantile until he spoke. "Evening, Mrs. Nash." She startled, recognizing Nathan Archer's voice immediately. "Mr. Archer, you startled me." He straightened, hat in hand. "My apologies. I was just heading to the saloon for dinner." He hesitated, then added, "Are you all right? That encounter this morning seemed troubling." Willow glanced nervously up the street toward Jeremiah's house. "It was nothing. Family disagreements happen." "That didn't look like a disagreement," Nathan said quietly. "It looked like intimidation." Willow's defenses rose. Mr. Archer, while I appreciate your concern, you know nothing about my situation. You're right, I don't. But I know the look of someone trapped in circumstances beyond their control. His gaze was penetrating but kind. I've seen it before. Something in his tone made Willow pause. I have to go. My father-in-law is expecting me. Nathan nodded, replacing his hat. Of course. But Mrs. Nash, if you ever need a friend, I'll be staying at the Anderson Ranch. I started work there today. Willow hesitated, torn between caution and a desperate need for an ally. Thank you, Mr. Archer. Good night. She continued up the street, feeling his eyes on her back until she turned the corner. The encounter left her unsettled, not least because for a moment she'd been tempted to pour out everything to this virtual stranger. Jeremiah's house loomed ahead, windows glowing with lamplight. Willow took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and climbed the steps to the front door. Before she could knock, it swung open to reveal Jeremiah himself, dressed formally as though for an important meeting. You're late, he said by way of greeting. It's not yet 8 o'clock, Willow replied, glancing at the grandfather clock visible in the hallway beyond. Jeremiah ignored this, gesturing her inside. Come, Mr. Howard has arrived early. Willow froze on the threshold. He's here, now. In the parlor, he was passing through on business and decided to expedite matters. A cold dread settled in Willow's stomach. This wasn't the private discussion she'd anticipated. Jeremiah had arranged an ambush, presenting the matter as already decided. I'm not prepared to meet him tonight, she protested weakly. Jeremiah's hand clamped around her upper arm, pulling her inside and closing the door. You don't need to be prepared. You need to be agreeable. Mr. Howard is offering you a position and a home. You should be grateful. And my daughters, we've discussed this. They'll remain here with me. No, Willow yanked her arm free, surprising them both with her vehemence. I won't leave my children, not for Mr. Howard, not for anyone. Jeremiah's face darkened. You have no choice in the matter. The arrangements are made. Jacob would never have wanted this. Jacob wanted a son, Jeremiah hissed, suddenly furious. A son to carry on our name, our legacy. Instead, you gave him nothing but daughters, and now his line ends. You failed him, Willow. You failed the Nash family. The accusation struck her like a physical blow. That's not true. Jacob loved our daughters. He was too kind to tell you the truth. Every time you birthed another girl, I saw the disappointment in his eyes. He confided in me, you know, said he'd hoped for a boy each time. Willow shook her head, refusing to believe it. You're lying. Jeremiah stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Why do you think he spent so much time at the mines? He was avoiding coming home to your failure. Tears sprang to Willow's eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. I don't believe you. Jacob wrote to me every day he was at the mines. He called our girls his precious treasures. Pretty words to spare your feelings. Jeremiah sneered. Now, you will come into that parlor and meet Mr. Howard with a smile on your face, or I swear to God, I will ensure you never see those girls again. A cough from the parlor doorway interrupted them. A heavy-set man with a graying beard stood there, discomfort evident in his posture. Mr. Nash, perhaps this isn't the best time after all. I can see the young lady is distressed. Jeremiah's demeanor changed instantly, a genial smile replacing his scowl. Nonsense, Howard. Just a small family disagreement. Willow is simply concerned about her daughters, as any mother would be. Mr. Howard's gaze shifted to Willow, assessing. I understood the children would be joining her. There was a misunderstanding, Jeremiah said smoothly. The girls are Nash family members. They'll remain here in Kelton. Howard frowned. That wasn't our agreement, Nash. I need help with the house, yes, but I have no desire to separate a mother from her children. That's cruel business. Hope flickered in Willow's chest, At least this stranger had some decency. Jeremiah's smile tightened. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Howard. I think not. Howard reached for his hat, which sat on a side table. I've changed my mind about the position. Good evening to you both. With that, he nodded respectfully to Willow and showed himself out. Jeremiah stood rigid with fury as the front door closed behind his departing guest. The silence stretched between them, taut and dangerous. Finally, Willow spoke. I should return to my children. You ungrateful harlot, Jeremiah snarled, advancing on her. You've ruined everything. Willow backed away, her heart pounding. I did nothing. Mr. Howard simply has more compassion than you. Compassion? Jeremiah laughed bitterly. What good has compassion ever done? It didn't give my son an heir. It didn't save him from that mine collapse. Neither did cruelty, Willow countered, finding unexpected courage in her desperation. Your cruelty won't bring Jacob back. It won't change the fact that he loved his daughters. Get out. Jeremiah's voice was deadly quiet. Get out of my house. Willow didn't need to be told twice. She turned and fled, not stopping until she reached the street. The night air cooled her flushed cheeks as she hurried back toward her small home, her mind racing. She had won a temporary reprieve, but nothing more. Jeremiah would try again, perhaps with someone less scrupulous than Mr. Howard. She needed a plan, and quickly. As she approached her house, Willow noticed a figure on her porch. For a terrified moment, she thought Jeremiah had somehow beaten her home. Then moonlight illuminated familiar features. Mr. Archer, she called softly, slowing her pace. Nathan stood from where he'd been sitting on her porch steps. Mrs. Nash, I apologize for the intrusion. What are you doing here? I was concerned. You seemed troubled earlier, and when Mrs. Peterson mentioned you'd gone to your father-in-law's house. He hesitated. I thought you might appreciate an escort home. Willow didn't know whether to be touched by his concern or alarmed by his presumption. That's very thoughtful but unnecessary. Is it? His gaze was searching, and Willow had the disconcerting feeling he could see right through her carefully maintained facade. Those bruises on your arm tell a different story. Willow instinctively covered her arm where Jeremiah had grabbed her. She hadn't realized the sleeve of her dress had risen enough to reveal the marks. It's not what you think, she said automatically, isn't it? Nathan's voice was gentle without judgment. Mrs. Nash, Willow, I know we're strangers, but sometimes it's easier to speak truth to someone with no connection to your life. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. Willow felt tears threatening again and blinked rapidly to dispel them. Mr. Archer, I appreciate your concern, truly. But this is a private family matter. Abuse should never be private, he said quietly. The word hung in the air between them. Abuse. Such an ugly, shameful word, yet it accurately described what Jeremiah had been doing to her these past months. Before Willow could respond, the door opened behind Nathan, and Mrs. Peterson peered out anxiously. Oh, Mrs. Nash, thank goodness. Little Sarah's been crying something fierce for the past 10 minutes. I can't seem to console her. The sound of her baby's wails drifted through the open door, pushing all other concerns aside. Thank you for watching them, Mrs. Peterson. I'll take care of Sarah now. The elderly woman nodded, casting a curious glance at Nathan before bidding them good night and shuffling off toward her own home next door. Willow hurried inside, Nathan following uninvited but not unwelcome. She found Sarah red-faced and screaming in her cradle, tiny fists waving in distress. Lifting the baby into her arms, Willow murmured soothing words, rocking gently until the cries began to subside. She's teething, Willow explained, suddenly conscious of Nathan watching from the doorway. The pain wakes her at night sometimes. Nathan nodded, his expression softening as he observed the child. "She's beautiful. How old?" "10 months." Willow pressed a kiss to Sarah's forehead, relieved to find her calming. "Mr. Archer, while I appreciate your escort, it's highly improper for you to be in my home at this hour." "You're right, of course." He took a step back. "But before I go, let me ask you something. The man at the store today, your father-in-law, he's the one hurting you, isn't he?" Willow tensed but didn't deny it. "Jeremiah Nash is a powerful man in Kelton. He controls everything since my husband died, our home, our finances, even my daughter's future. And he blames you for not giving your husband a son," Nathan said, not a question but a statement. Willow's gaze shot to his face in surprise. "How did you know?" "I overheard talk at the saloon. People gossip, especially about the family of a town founder." His expression darkened. What they described as rightful disappointment sounded more like targeted cruelty to me. "It's gotten worse since Jacob died," Willow admitted, the words spilling out despite her best intentions to remain silent. "Tonight he tried to send me away as a housekeeper for a widower in Cedar City without my daughters." Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's unconscionable." "The man refused when he realized Jeremiah meant to separate us, thank God, but he'll try again." Willow lowered Sarah, now sleeping, back into her cradle. "I don't know what to do. I have nowhere to go, no money of my own." "You've done nothing wrong," Nathan said firmly. "Bearing daughters instead of sons isn't a failure, Willow. It's simply nature." The words, so simple yet so profound, broke something inside her. Tears she'd been holding back for months finally spilled over. "Jeremiah doesn't see it that way. Jeremiah is wrong." Nathan's voice was fierce but quiet, mindful of the sleeping children. "And he has no right to punish you for something beyond your control." Willow wiped at her tears, embarrassed by her emotional display in front of this near stranger. "I should never have told you all this. Please, you should go." Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "I'll go. But Mrs. Nash, Willow, please know that you're not alone. I meant what I said earlier. If you need help, I'm at the Anderson Ranch." As he moved toward the door, a thought struck Willow. "Mr. Archer, why are you doing this? You don't know me." "You owe me nothing." He paused, his expression difficult to read in the dim light. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when no one steps in to help someone in need." A shadow crossed his face. "My sister was trapped in a marriage not unlike your situation, by the time I realized how bad it was." He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. No one should have to endure that kind of treatment. The personal revelation surprised Willow, humanizing this mysterious man who had appeared so suddenly in her life. "I'm sorry about your sister," she said softly. "So am I." He placed his hat on his head. "Good night, Mrs. Nash. Lock your door behind me." After he left, Willow did as instructed, turning the key in the lock and sliding the bolt for good measure. Then she checked on Abigail and Emma, still sleeping soundly, before settling into a chair near Sarah's cradle. Sleep eluded her as she contemplated her limited options. She could stay and endure Jeremiah's escalating abuse, hoping he wouldn't follow through on his threat to separate her from her children. She could try to flee, though without resources or destination. That seemed impossible with 3 young children in tow. Or she could accept help from Nathan Archer, a man she barely knew but who seemed genuinely concerned for her welfare. None of these choices seemed ideal. All carried significant risks. But as dawn approached and Willow watched the first pale light filter through the curtains, she made her decision. She would not live in fear any longer. Somehow, she would find a way to protect her daughters and secure their future, even if that meant accepting help from an unexpected source. When Jeremiah pounded on her door at mid-morning, Willow was ready. She opened it to find him standing there, face set in grim lines, flanked by Sheriff Miller. "Good morning, Jeremiah." "Sheriff," she greeted them calmly, though her heart raced beneath her composed exterior. Jeremiah didn't bother with pleasantries. "Pack your things, Willow. I've made arrangements with the Reverend's wife to take the girls temporarily until more permanent care can be established." "I'm not going anywhere, and neither are my daughters," Willow replied, her voice steady. Sheriff Miller looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Nash, your father-in-law has explained the situation. As the executor of your late husband's estate, he does have certain legal rights." "Sheriff," Willow interrupted. "May I speak with you privately for a moment?" Jeremiah scoffed. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of me." "Actually, I'd prefer to hear Mrs. Nash out," the sheriff said, surprising them both. "Perhaps we could step inside, madam." Willow opened the door wider, allowing the sheriff to enter while pointedly not extending the same invitation to Jeremiah. The older man's face flushed with anger, but he remained on the porch as Willow closed the door. Inside, the sheriff removed his hat, his expression grave. "Mrs. Nash, I should tell you that legally speaking, your father-in-law is within his rights. The will was quite clear about his guardianship role." "I understand that, Sheriff," Willow said, "but what about his legal obligations?" "Jacob intended for his father to provide for us, not to abuse and terrorize us." She pushed up her sleeve, revealing the vivid bruises Jeremiah's fingers had left. Sheriff Miller's eyes widened. "Did he do that to you?" Willow nodded. "Multiple times. And now he's attempting to separate me from my children as punishment for not giving Jacob a son." The sheriff's brow furrowed. "That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Nash. It's the truth. Ask Mr. Howard from Cedar City, who refused Jeremiah's arrangement when he realized the children weren't to accompany me. Ask Nathan Archer, who witnessed Jeremiah manhandling me at Granger's store yesterday." "Archer, the new hand at Anderson's place?" "Yes, he's been kind." Willow hesitated, then added, "Sheriff, I'm afraid, not just for myself but for my daughters. What happens when they're older? Will he blame them too for being born female?" The sheriff paced the small room, clearly troubled. "I sympathize with your situation, Mrs. Nash. Truly I do. But the law is the law. Without proof of severe misconduct, I can't interfere with the legal arrangements established by your husband's will." "These bruises aren't proof enough?" Willow asked bitterly. "They're evidence of rough treatment, certainly. But Jeremiah could claim they happened any number of ways." The sheriff sighed heavily. "The best advice I can give you is to comply with his wishes for now, while I look into whether there are legal options to contest the will's provisions." Willow's hope deflated. "That could take months, even years. My daughters need me now." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Nash, I truly am." The sheriff replaced his hat, his expression genuinely regretful. "If there were more I could do." "There is," Willow said suddenly. "You could look the other way. Pardon. If I were to leave town with my children, tonight, you could choose not to pursue us immediately." The sheriff stared at her, his expression unreadable. "You're asking me to ignore a legal directive. That's against my oath. I'm asking you to give a mother and her children a chance at safety and happiness." A long silence followed as Sheriff Miller studied her, internal conflict evident in his gaze. Finally, he sighed. "Mrs. Nash, I never had this conversation with you. Do you understand?" Relief washed over Willow. "Yes, Sheriff, thank you." He nodded once, then moved toward the door. "I'll tell Jeremiah I've advised you to comply with his wishes. That should buy you some time to make your arrangements." After the sheriff left, Jeremiah burst in triumphant. "Pack your things. You leave tomorrow morning." Willow feigned defeat. "May I at least have today to say goodbye to my daughters?" Something like sympathy flickered across Jeremiah's face, quickly replaced by stern resolve. "Fine. One day. I'll return at sunup tomorrow to collect you." When he was gone, Willow began moving with purposeful efficiency. She packed only essentials: clothes for herself and the girls, Jacob's pocket watch and letters, the family Bible containing their marriage certificate and the girls' birth records. Everything had to fit in 2 carpet bags, all they could reasonably carry. She counted the meager savings she'd hidden beneath a loose floorboard. $23.45, all she'd managed to squirrel away from household money over the past 3 months. It wouldn't get them far, but it would have to be enough. By mid-afternoon, her preparations were complete. She gathered the girls in the kitchen, explaining in simple terms that they needed to take a trip. "Like an adventure?" Abigail asked, eyes wide with excitement. "Yes, sweetheart." "A big adventure. Will Papa be there?" Emma's innocent question pierced Willow's heart. "No, darling, Papa is in heaven, remember, but he's watching over us always." As the sun began to set, Willow put the girls to bed as usual, instructing Abigail and Emma to rest but not change into their night clothes. Once they were settled, she paced anxiously by the window, watching for any sign of Nathan Archer. She had no way to contact him at the Anderson ranch, no guarantee he would come. Her entire plan hinged on the hope that his offer of help had been sincere. Night fell. The girls slept. Willow waited, alternating between desperate hope and crushing despair. Had she misread his intentions? Was she foolish to trust a virtual stranger? Just when she'd nearly abandoned hope, a soft knock sounded at the back door. Heart in her throat, Willow crept to answer it. Nathan stood on the small back porch, a saddled horse visible behind him in the moonlight. "You came," Willow breathed, relief making her dizzy. "I said I would help if needed." His eyes took in her packed bags by the door. "I'm guessing the need is now." Quickly, Willow explained Jeremiah's ultimatum and the sheriff's tacit agreement to look the other way. "We need to leave tonight before Jeremiah suspects anything." Nathan nodded. "I've arranged for a wagon at the edge of town. Anderson let me borrow it, thinks I'm fetching supplies from the next town over." He glanced at the sleeping children. "We should move quickly." Willow woke the girls, hushing their sleepy questions as she helped them into their coats. Abigail, understanding the need for quiet, helped with Sarah while Willow gathered their bags. They slipped out the back door, Nathan carrying Emma while Willow held Sarah and guided Abigail by the hand. His horse followed quietly behind as they made their way through back alleys and gardens, avoiding the main streets where they might be seen. At the edge of town, a small wagon waited, hitched to 2 sturdy horses. Nathan helped them all aboard, securing their bags beneath the seat. "Where are we going?" Willow whispered as he climbed up beside her and took the reins. "South, to start, then east toward Colorado territory. I have friends in a small settlement near the border. They'll help us get established until you decide what you want to do next." Willow glanced back at Kelton, at the only home her daughters had ever known. "I'm putting a lot of faith in you, Mr. Archer. I know." His eyes met hers in the darkness. "I won't betray that trust, Willow, I promise." She believed him, though she couldn't have explained why. Perhaps it was the steady certainty in his voice, or the gentle way he'd helped Emma into the wagon. Whatever the reason, as the wagon rolled away from Kelton under cover of darkness, Willow felt hope unfurling within her for the first time in months. Dawn found them miles from Kelton, following a little used trail through scrubland. The girls, having slept for most of the journey, were beginning to stir in the back of the wagon where Willow had made them comfortable with blankets. "Mama, where are we?" Abigail asked, rubbing her eyes as she sat up. "We're on our adventure, remember," Willow smiled reassuringly. "This is Mr. Archer, he's helping us." Abigail regarded Nathan solemnly. "Like the knight in the story," Nathan chuckled. I'm no knight, Miss Abigail, just a friend. Are we running away from grandfather? Abigail's perception startled both adults. Willow hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sweetheart. Grandfather wanted to separate us, and I couldn't let that happen. Good, Abigail said decisively. He was mean to you. I heard him calling you bad names when he thought I was sleeping. Willow's heart ached at the knowledge that her daughter had been aware of Jeremiah's cruelty. We're going to start fresh somewhere new, where we can be happy together. Will there be other children to play with? Emma had awakened and was listening intently. I expect so, Nathan answered. The place we're going has several families with children. This news pleased both girls enormously, and they spent the next hour chattering about potential new friends. Sarah, content to be held on Willow's lap, watched the changing landscape with wide, curious eyes. As the sun climbed higher, Nathan guided the wagon off the trail into a sheltered gully where a small stream provided fresh water. We should rest the horses and get something to eat, he suggested. While Nathan tended to the animals, Willow prepared a simple meal from the provisions he'd brought: bread, cheese, and dried apples. The girls delighted in the impromptu picnic, treating it as a grand adventure rather than a desperate flight. Watching them play near the stream under Nathan's watchful eye, Willow felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief at their escape, anxiety about their uncertain future, and a growing appreciation for the man who had risked so much to help them. Why did you really come to Kelton? She asked quietly when he rejoined her. It seems more than coincidence that you appeared just when we needed help most. Nathan considered her question, his blue eyes thoughtful. I was headed to Colorado anyway, looking for work. Kelton seemed as good a place as any to earn some money for the journey. He paused. But I admit, when I saw how that man treated you in the store, it reminded me too much of my sister's situation. I couldn't just ride away. What happened to her? Your sister? Pain flickered across his features. Her husband beat her for years. By the time I found out how bad it was too late. She died of injuries he inflicted, though the doctor called it female hysteria to spare the man's reputation. I'm so sorry, Willow whispered, understanding now his fierce reaction to her bruises. I couldn't save Caroline, but when I saw you... He shrugged, embarrassed by his own admission. I thought perhaps this time I could make a difference. Impulsively, Willow reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly. You already have, Nathan. More than you know. The moment lingered between them, filled with unspoken understanding, until Sarah's demanding cries broke the spell. Willow rose to attend to her daughter, aware of a subtle shift in her relationship with Nathan, no longer simply a benefactor, but perhaps a friend. They continued their journey through the day, making good time despite the rough terrain. Nathan kept them away from main roads and settlements, wary of pursuit. By nightfall, they had covered nearly 30 miles, putting considerable distance between themselves and Jeremiah Nash. Nathan found them a protected spot to camp beneath an outcropping of rock that provided natural shelter. He built a small fire, careful to keep it low and shielded to avoid attracting attention. After the girls were asleep once more, exhausted from the day's excitement, Willow and Nathan sat by the fire, speaking in hushed tones. You think he'll come after us? Willow asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her all day. Eventually, Nathan replied honestly. A man like that doesn't easily accept defeat, but we've got a good head start, and I know these territories well enough to keep us off the beaten path. I've taken you away from your life, your plans. I can never repay you for that. Nathan shook his head. I didn't have much of a life to leave behind, Willow. I've been drifting since the war, taking work where I could find it. He poked at the fire with a stick. Truth be told, having a purpose again feels good. even if that purpose is protecting a widow and 3 small girls, especially then. His smile was warm in the firelight. Your daughters are wonderful. You've raised them well, despite everything. Willow felt a flush of pride and gratitude. After months of Jeremiah's constant criticism, Nathan's simple affirmation of her mothering felt like rain on parched soil. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." They fell into comfortable silence, the crackling fire and the girls' steady breathing the only sounds in the vast wilderness surrounding them. For the first time in months, Willow felt peace steal over her. They weren't safe yet, not by any measure, but they were free, and for tonight, that was enough. The next 5 days passed in a similar rhythm. Traveling by day, camping by night, always moving eastward toward the Colorado border. Nathan proved to be an excellent travel companion, patient with the children's questions and capable in handling any difficulties that arose. He taught Abigail to identify animal tracks and showed Emma how to whistle through a blade of grass. Even baby Sarah seemed taken with him, offering him gummy smiles that made Willow's heart twist strangely. On the 6th day, as they crossed into Colorado territory, Nathan grew more vigilant, frequently checking their backtrail. "Is something wrong?" Willow asked, noticing his tension. "Probably nothing," he said, but his furrowed brow belied his casual tone. "I thought I saw dust on the horizon earlier. Could be travelers, could be pursuit." Willow's stomach clenched with fear. "Jeremiah, or bounty hunters he's hired." "We're close to the settlement, though just another day's journey. If we push on through the night, we could make it by morning." The decision was made for them when, an hour later, Nathan spotted riders in the distance, clearly following their trail. 4 men moving fast, he reported grimly. "What do we do?" Willow gathered Sarah closer, instinctively protective. Nathan's expression was determined as he urged the horses to a faster pace. "We run." What followed was a harrowing race across increasingly rugged terrain. Nathan pushed the wagon and horses to their limits, taking advantage of his knowledge of the land to find paths their pursuers might not anticipate. Willow kept the girls calm, turning their fear into a game of being very quiet, like mice hiding from a cat. As dusk approached, they reached a narrow canyon where the trail wound between high rock walls. "This is good," Nathan muttered, more to himself than to Willow. "Defensible position if it comes to that." The words sent a chill through Willow. "You think it will come to fighting?" Nathan glanced at her, his expression grim but resolute. "I hope not. But if it does, I want you to take the girls and keep heading east along this trail. The settlement is about 10 miles further. You can't miss it once you clear the canyon." "I won't leave you," Willow protested. "If it comes to it, you will," he insisted. "Your daughters need you, Willow." Before she could argue further, the distant sound of hoofbeats echoed through the canyon. Their pursuers were closing in. Nathan guided the wagon to a spot where a fallen boulder created a natural barricade on one side of the trail. Quickly, he helped Willow and the girls down, positioning them behind the rock. "Stay here, stay quiet," he instructed, checking his revolver. "Who do you think they are?" Willow whispered, trying to keep the fear from her voice for the girls' sake. "Could be Jeremiah hired guns. Could be ordinary bounty hunters thinking there's a reward." Nathan's jaw set in a hard line. "Either way, I aim to find out before they get any closer to you and the girls." He moved to the edge of their shelter, positioning himself where he could see down the trail while remaining partially concealed. Willow held her breath, one arm around Sarah, the other gathering Abigail and Emma close. The riders appeared around a bend in the canyon, 4 men as Nathan had counted, all armed. They slowed when they spotted the wagon, then came to a complete halt when Nathan stepped into view, his revolver held casually but visibly at his side. "Evening, gentlemen," Nathan called, his voice echoing slightly in the canyon. "Something I can help you with," the lead rider, a hard-faced man with a sheriff's badge pinned to his vest, nudged his horse forward. "Nathan Archer." "Who's asking?" "Sheriff Davis from Kelton. We're here for Mrs. Nash and her children. Her father-in-law reported them kidnapped 6 days ago." Willow's blood ran cold. Kidnapped. Jeremiah had twisted their escape into an abduction. "No one's been kidnapped," Nathan replied evenly. "Mrs. Nash left of her own free will to escape an abusive situation." The sheriff snorted. "That's not how Mr. Nash tells it. Says you seduced his son's widow and stole away his granddaughters in the night." Nathan's laugh held no humor. "Is that what he's claiming?" Interesting story from a man who was trying to separate a mother from her children as punishment for not bearing a son. One of the other men shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. The sheriff noticed and scowled. "Look, Archer, I don't much care about the family drama. I've got a job to do. Hand over the woman and her kids and you can be on your way with just a warning." "And if I refuse?" The sheriff's hand moved to his own weapon. "Then we've got a problem." Tension crackled in the air. Willow clutched her daughters tighter, heart hammering in her chest. How had it come to this, a standoff in a canyon with armed men? All because she dared to protect her children from Jeremiah's cruelty. Unable to bear it any longer, Willow stood, stepping out from behind the boulder. "I'm here, Sheriff Davis." "Willow, no." Nathan hissed, but she ignored him, moving forward with Sarah in her arms. Abigail and Emma followed, clinging to her skirts. "Mrs. Nash," the sheriff acknowledged with a nod, "your father-in-law is mighty worried about you and these little ones." "I doubt that very much, Sheriff." Willow's voice was stronger than she felt. "Jeremiah Nash has been abusing me for months. When I refused to abandon my daughters to become a housekeeper for a stranger, he threatened to take them from me permanently. I left to protect my family, not because Mr. Archer kidnapped us." The sheriff seemed taken aback by her directness. "Madam, I understand you might have had a falling out with your father-in-law, but the law is clear. He's the legal guardian of those children and—" "Look at her arm," Nathan interrupted, his voice hard. "Look at the bruises Jeremiah Nash left when he grabbed her in the general store. Ask your own sheriff in Kelton, he saw them himself." One of the other men spoke up. "Davis, maybe we should hear them out. Johnson did say something wasn't right about this job." The sheriff shot him an irritated look before turning his attention back to Willow. "Mrs. Nash, regardless of your grievances, I have legal papers requiring your return to Kelton with the children." "I won't go back," Willow declared, lifting her chin. "I won't subject my daughters to that man's cruelty." "You don't have much choice, madam." "Actually," a new voice called from behind the sheriff and his men, "she does." All heads turned to see a group of riders approaching from the opposite direction, at least a dozen men and women, some clearly Native American, others settlers, all armed and grim-faced. Their leader, a tall man with graying temples, urged his horse forward. "Sheriff Davis, isn't it?" "You're a long way from your jurisdiction," Davis scowled. "This doesn't concern you, Winters. When armed men threaten a woman and children in our territory, it very much concerns us," Winters replied coldly. "Mrs. Nash and her family are under our protection now." Willow glanced at Nathan in confusion. He moved to her side, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Joseph Winters," he explained quietly. "Leader of the settlement I told you about. I was hoping we'd reach them before your pursuers caught up." Understanding dawned. "You sent word ahead somehow?" Nathan nodded. "Left a message at the trading post we passed yesterday, hoping their scouts would find it." The standoff continued as Sheriff Davis assessed the newcomers, clearly recognizing he was now outnumbered. "I've got legal papers," he insisted, though with less conviction. "And I've got 24 armed citizens who don't recognize your authority here," Winters countered. "I suggest you return to Utah and inform Mr. Nash that his daughter-in-law and grandchildren have found sanctuary among friends." For a tense moment, it seemed Davis might challenge this, but finally he gestured to his men. "This isn't over," he warned Nathan and Willow, before turning his horse and riding back the way they had come, his companions following. As they disappeared around the bend, Willow's legs nearly gave out with relief. Nathan's arm slipped around her waist, steadying her. Joseph Winters dismounted and approached them, his weathered face breaking into a warm smile. "Nathan, good to see you made it. We've been watching for you since your message arrived." Nathan clasped the older man's hand. "Joseph, your timing couldn't have been better. Figured as much when we spotted those riders heading into the canyon ahead of us." Winters turned to Willow, his gaze kind. "Mrs. Nash, I'm Joseph Winters. Our settlement is just a few hours' ride from here. You and your children are welcome among us for as long as you need." Overwhelmed by the day's events and this unexpected rescue, Willow could only nod gratefully, tears threatening. "Thank you, Mr. Winters. I don't know how we can repay such kindness. No repayment necessary. We look after our own." He glanced at her daughters, who were watching the newcomers with wide eyes. "And these must be the young ladies Nathan told us about." Abigail stepped forward, ever the brave one. "I'm Abigail. This is Emma, and that's Sarah. Are you really going to help us hide from grandfather?" Winters chuckled at her directness. "Indeed we are, Miss Abigail. Our settlement has plenty of children for you to play with, and your mother will find friends there too." As the other riders approached to introduce themselves, Willow found herself surrounded by friendly faces offering welcome and assistance. These strangers, men and women of different backgrounds and races united in a remote settlement, had risked themselves to protect her family. The realization brought fresh tears to her eyes. "Nathan," she said softly, turning to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "How did you know these people would help us?" "Because they helped me once when I needed it most," he replied simply. "This is a place for new beginnings, Willow. For second chances." Looking at the diverse group preparing to escort them to safety, Willow felt hope bloom fully in her heart. Perhaps here, among these kind strangers, she and her daughters could finally find the peace and security they deserved. As they resumed their journey, this time with a protective escort surrounding them, Willow found herself riding beside Nathan in the wagon, the girls happily chatting with some of the settlement's children who had accompanied the rescue party. "I still can't believe you arranged all this," she said, watching as Emma solemnly taught a young boy her age how to make a grass whistle, just as Nathan had shown her. Nathan shrugged, appearing almost embarrassed by her gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Willow shook her head firmly. "Not anyone. Most would have looked the other way, as people did in Kelton for months. You saw someone in need and acted at considerable risk to yourself." "Well," he said after a moment, "perhaps I understand better than most what's at stake when no one intervenes." His expression grew distant, and Willow knew he was thinking of his sister again. Impulsively, she reached for his hand. "Caroline would be proud of you, Nathan." Surprise flickered across his features, followed by a warmth that made Willow's heart beat faster. "Thank you for saying that." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the canyon gradually opening to reveal a sweeping valley dotted with trees and bisected by a gleaming river. In the distance, Willow could make out buildings the settlement Nathan had promised. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Wait until you see it up close," Nathan smiled. The settlement, it's called Harmony Valley, was founded about 10 years ago by Joseph and a group of like-minded folks who wanted a different kind of community. They don't much care where you came from or what you look like, only how you contribute and whether you're willing to respect others. It sounds almost too good to be true. It has its challenges, like anywhere, but the people there believe in second chances and supporting each other. He glanced at her. You'll have help there, Willow. You won't have to face everything alone anymore. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her, a longing not just for safety, but for connection, for belonging. She'd been so focused on survival these past months that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of a community. As they descended into the valley, the settlement came into clearer view. Neat cabins and a few larger buildings arranged around a central green space, gardens and corrals visible behind the structures. People paused in their activities to wave as the returning party approached. By the time they reached the edge of the settlement, a small crowd had gathered to welcome them. Willow felt momentarily overwhelmed by all the new faces, but Nathan's reassuring presence beside her helped calm her nerves. Joseph Winters took charge, introducing Willow and her daughters to key members of the community. There was Hannah, the schoolteacher, Miguel, who ran the trading post, Running Deer, a Ute woman who served as the settlement's healer, and dozens of others whose names blurred together in Willow's tired mind. "You'll stay with the Williamsons for now," Joseph explained, gesturing to a kindly-looking couple in their 50s. "They have a spare room that should accommodate you and your girls comfortably." "That's very generous," Willow began, but Martha Williamson waved away her thanks. "It's no trouble at all, dear. We raised 5 children in that house, and it's too quiet now with just the 2 of us. We'll be glad for the company." As the crowd dispersed, returning to their daily tasks, Nathan helped carry Willow's bags to the Williamsons' comfortable cabin. The spare room was indeed spacious, with a large bed for Willow and room for a small trundle for the girls. "I'll see about getting a proper crib for the little one," Thomas Williamson offered, watching as Willow settled Sarah on the bed. "And I've got some stew simmering for supper," Martha added. "You all must be famished after your journey." Once they were alone in the room, Willow turned to Nathan, suddenly uncertain. "Will you stay in the settlement too?" "For a while, yes. Joseph always has work for an extra pair of hands." He hesitated, then added, "I want to make sure you and the girls are settled safely before I move on." The thought of him leaving sent an unexpected pang through Willow. "Of course. You've already done so much for us." Nathan studied her face, seeming to search for something in her expression. "Willow," whatever he meant to say was interrupted by Abigail tugging at his sleeve. "Mr. Nathan, Mrs. Williamson says there's apple pie for dessert. Do you like apple pie?" The serious moment broken, Nathan smiled down at the child. "Apple pie happens to be my favorite, Miss Abigail." "Shall we go investigate?" As they followed the excited girls to the kitchen, Willow found herself watching Nathan the way he listened intently to Emma's chatter, the gentle manner in which he lifted Sarah when she reached for him, the respectful attention he gave to Thomas Williamson's description of the settlement. In just a week, this man had become integral to their lives. More than their rescuer, he'd become their friend, a steadying presence in the chaos of their flight from Kelton. The thought of him eventually moving on, as he'd put it, left her feeling strangely bereft. But that was a concern for another day. For now, they were safe, surrounded by kind people willing to help them build a new life. As Willow watched her daughters happily devouring Martha's apple pie, their faces alight with simple joy, she offered a silent prayer of gratitude for this unexpected sanctuary. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity as Willow and her daughters settled into life at Harmony Valley. The community welcomed them with open arms, offering assistance, friendship, and most precious of all, acceptance. Abigail and Emma quickly made friends with the other children and began attending lessons with Hannah in the small schoolhouse. Sarah charmed everyone she met, especially Martha Williamson, who delighted in caring for the baby when Willow was busy. And Willow herself found purpose beyond motherhood for the first time in years. Discovering her talent for needlework, several community members commissioned her to sew or mend clothing. The modest income gave her a sense of independence she hadn't experienced since before her marriage. Nathan, true to his word, remained in the settlement, taking on various jobs from carpentry to hunting. He visited Willow and the girls daily, often joining them for meals at the Williamsons or taking Abigail and Emma fishing at the nearby river. Sarah's face would light up whenever he entered a room, and she had recently begun reaching for him with enthusiastic, na-na sounds that made everyone smile. Willow tried not to analyze too closely the warmth that spread through her whenever Nathan was near, or the disappointment she felt on the rare days when his work kept him away. Their friendship had deepened during their journey, but she was careful to maintain appropriate boundaries, mindful of her status as a recent widow and the debt of gratitude she already owed him. Still, she couldn't deny that something was growing between them, something that made her pulse quicken when their hands accidentally touched, or when she caught him watching her with that particular intensity in his blue eyes. One evening, about a month after their arrival, Willow sat on the Williamsons' porch, enjoying the cool air after putting the girls to bed. The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up to find Nathan climbing the steps, his expression unusually serious. "May I join you?" he asked, hat in hand. "Of course." She moved over on the bench to make room for him. "Is everything all right? You seem troubled." Nathan sat beside her, turning his hat in his hands, a nervous gesture she'd never observed in him before. "I received a letter today from a friend in Kelton." Willow tensed immediately. "Jeremiah." "He hasn't given up," Nathan confirmed grimly. "My friend says he's been making inquiries all through the territories, offering a substantial reward for information about your whereabouts." Fear, which had receded during their peaceful weeks in Harmony Valley, came rushing back. "Do you think he'll find us here?" "It's possible, though unlikely. This settlement is off the main trails, and Joseph is careful about who knows its location." Nathan hesitated, then added, "But there's more. Jeremiah has filed legal papers claiming I abducted you and the girls. There's a warrant for my arrest in Utah Territory." "That's absurd," Willow exclaimed. "I left willingly. The girls weren't abducted. Jeremiah Nash is a powerful man with connections. He's painting me as a seducer who took advantage of a vulnerable widow." Nathan's voice was bitter. "It's his word against ours, and in Kelton, his word carries weight." Willow's mind raced with implications. "What does this mean for you, for us?" "For now, nothing changes. We're safe here among friends." Nathan's gaze met hers directly. "But Willow, I need to know what you want for your future. Do you intend to stay in Harmony Valley permanently?" The question caught her off guard. "I hadn't thought beyond finding safety for the girls. The people here have been wonderful, but it's not home yet," he finished for her. "No," she admitted. "Though I'm not sure where home is anymore." Nathan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I've been thinking about that. There might be a way to secure your future and the girls more permanently." "How?" He took a deep breath, as if bracing himself. "Marriage." Willow stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "I beg your pardon. As a widow with no legal protection, you're vulnerable. Jeremiah can continue to pursue custody of your daughters indefinitely." Nathan's voice was matter-of-fact, though Willow detected an underlying tension. "But as a married woman with a husband to speak for you legally, your position would be much stronger." "You're suggesting a marriage of convenience," Willow said slowly, trying to process his proposal. It would serve practical purposes, yes. But Willow. He hesitated, then seemed to gather his courage. My feelings for you and your daughters are far from merely convenient. These past weeks, watching you build a new life here, seeing your strength and kindness, I've come to care for you, deeply. The confession hung in the air between them. Willow's heart hammered in her chest as she searched his face, finding sincerity and something more of vulnerability she'd never seen in him before. Nathan, she faltered, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. This is so unexpected. I know, he acknowledged. And I don't expect an immediate answer. It's a serious decision that affects not just you but your daughters as well. My daughters adore you, Willow said softly. That much is clear. Hope flickered in his eyes. And you, Willow, what do you feel? It was a question she'd been carefully avoiding, even in the privacy of her own thoughts. Now, faced with his direct inquiry, Willow found she couldn't dissemble. I feel grateful, certainly. You've risked everything to help us. She paused, gathering courage to continue. But it's more than gratitude. When I'm with you, I feel safe, yes, but also seen. In a way I haven't been since Jacob died, perhaps even before that. Nathan reached for her hand, his touch gentle. I would never presume to replace Jacob in your heart or your memories. But I promise you this. If you accept, I will spend every day striving to be a good husband to you and a loving father to your daughters. Tears sprang to Willow's eyes at the earnestness of his pledge. I believe you would, Nathan, but marriage is a lifetime commitment. Are you certain this is what you want? I've never been more certain of anything. His gaze held her steadily. I love you, Willow Nash. I think I have since that first day in the general store when you stood tall despite everything weighing you down. The declaration stunned her into momentary silence. Love. She'd expected him to speak of respect, of friendship, of practical considerations, not love. I don't expect you to return those feelings yet, he added quickly, misinterpreting her silence. I know it's soon and you're still grieving Jacob. I'm willing to wait to give you all the time you need. Willow shook her head, finding her voice at last. It's not that, Nathan. It's just, no one has spoken to me of love in a very long time. She drew a shaky breath. Jacob loved me. I know he did. But in those last years, with the pressure for a son, love became complicated, tangled with disappointment even when he tried to hide it. I would never measure your worth by whether you bear sons, Nathan said fiercely. Your daughters are precious gifts. Any child we might have together, son or daughter, would be equally cherished. The words children together sent a flutter through Willow's stomach, part anxiety, part something warmer and more hopeful. Could she envision a future with this man, building a life, perhaps expanding their family? Looking into his earnest blue eyes, Willow realized the answer was yes. Somewhere along their journey, between his first act of kindness in Granger's store and this moment on the Williamsons' porch, Nathan Archer had become essential to her happiness. I need time to think, she said finally. Not because I doubt you, but because this decision affects so many lives. I must be sure it's the right path forward for all of us. Nathan nodded, squeezing her hand gently before releasing it. Of course, take all the time you need. As he rose to leave, Willow called after him. Nathan. Thank you. For everything, but especially for giving me a choice. It's been a long time since anyone asked what I wanted. His smile in the gathering dusk made her heart skip a beat. Your wants matter, Willow. They always will to me. After he'd gone, Willow remained on the porch, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Marriage to Nathan would solve their most pressing practical problems. It would provide legal protection for her and the girls, potentially ending Jeremiah's pursuit once and for all. But it was more than practicality that made her seriously consider his proposal. In the weeks since their escape from Kelton, Nathan had shown himself to be kind, patient, and genuinely fond of her daughters. He treated her with a respect she'd almost forgotten she deserved, valuing her opinions and encouraging her independence even as he offered his protection. And there was the undeniable attraction between them, a spark that had grown steadily since their first meeting. Willow blushed in the darkness, remembering the flutter in her stomach when their hands touched, the warmth that spread through her when he smiled. Could that be love? It felt different from what she'd experienced with Jacob, less like the passionate infatuation of youth and more like a steady flame, warming rather than consuming. Rising from the bench, Willow went inside to check on her sleeping daughters. Abigail and Emma shared a trundle bed, their small bodies curled toward each other. Sarah slept peacefully in the cradle Thomas Williamson had crafted for her. Looking at them, Willow knew her decision couldn't be based solely on her own feelings. These three precious girls deserved a father who would love and protect them, who would value them for exactly who they were. Jacob had loved them. Willow had no doubt. But his father's constant pressure for a male heir had cast a shadow over their family life, a shadow that had darkened terribly after Jacob's death. Nathan had promised to cherish her daughters equally with any future children they might have. More importantly, he had demonstrated that commitment through his actions, treating each girl with individualized attention and genuine affection. As Willow prepared for bed, her mind continued to wrestle with the decision. By morning, she knew what her answer would be. She found Nathan at the settlement's small stable where he was helping Thomas Williamson repair a stall door. When he saw her approaching, he straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "Willow," he greeted her, a question in his eyes. "Could we speak privately?" she asked. Thomas tactfully excused himself, leaving them alone among the horses. Nathan watched her expectantly, his expression carefully neutral though Willow could sense his tension. "I've been thinking about your proposal," she began. "And—" His voice was steady, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the stall door. "Before I give you my answer, I need to be absolutely clear about something." Willow took a deep breath. "If we marry, it would not be merely a marriage of convenience for me, Nathan. My feelings for you have grown into something I can no longer ignore or deny." Hope dawned in his eyes. "Willow, I'm not sure I can call it love yet," she continued honestly. "It's too soon, and the word feels too weighted with my past. But I care for you deeply, and I believe that what I feel could grow into love, real love, not born of gratitude or necessity, but of genuine affection and respect." Nathan stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "That's more than I dared hope for." "Is it enough?" she asked softly. "I don't want to shortchange you, to offer less than you deserve." "Willow Nash," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "the chance to build a life with you and your daughters is more than I ever thought possible. Your honesty, your willingness to open your heart again despite everything you've endured, that's a gift beyond measure." Tears pricked at Willow's eyes. "Then my answer is yes, Nathan Archer. I will marry you." The joy that transformed his face was answer enough to any lingering doubts she might have harbored. He reached for her hands, holding them reverently between his own. "I promise you won't regret this decision," he vowed. "I will spend my life ensuring you and the girls are safe, respected, and loved." "I believe you," Willow said simply. And she did, with a certainty that surprised her. This man had proven his character through actions, not words, risking his freedom to protect a woman and children he barely knew, asking nothing in return. Nathan lifted her hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "May I speak with the girls? I'd like their blessing as well." The request touched Willow deeply. Of course, they should be finishing their lessons soon. They found Abigail and Emma just leaving the schoolhouse, chattering excitedly about the day's learning. Sarah was with Martha, who had offered to watch her while Willow ran errands. Nathan suggested a picnic by the river, and soon the five of them were settled on a blanket in the dappled shade of cottonwood trees, sharing bread, cheese, and the season's first strawberries. After they'd eaten, Nathan grew serious. "Girls, I'd like to ask you something important," he began, including all three in his gaze, though Sarah was too young to understand. "I've asked your mother to marry me to become a family together, but I wanted to know how you feel about that." Abigail, ever direct, spoke first. "Would you be our new father?" "I would," Nathan confirmed. "I could never replace your real father who loved you very much, but I would be honored to help raise you and care for you as my own daughters." "Would we live together, all of us?" Emma asked. "Yes, in a house of our own here in Harmony Valley." The girls exchanged looks, having one of those silent conversations that siblings sometimes share. Finally, Abigail nodded decisively. "I think that would be good," she pronounced. "Mama smiles more when you're around." Emma nodded in agreement. "And you tell the best stories, better than grandfathers, which were always scary." Sarah, sensing the importance of the moment, crawled across the blanket to Nathan, pulling herself up on his knee and offering a drooly smile that made everyone laugh. "I think that's a yes from all three," Willow said, her heart full as she watched Nathan gently bounce Sarah on his knee. Looking at them, this man who had risked everything to save them, these daughters who had endured far more than children their age should have to, Willow felt a surge of fierce protectiveness and profound gratitude. They might not be a conventional family, brought together by circumstance rather than birth, but the bonds forming between them were no less real or precious for that. 2 weeks later, on a perfect June morning, Willow Nash became Willow Archer in a simple ceremony performed by Joseph Winters. The entire settlement turned out to celebrate, transforming the occasion into a community festival with music, dancing, and enough food to feed twice their number. Abigail and Emma, dressed in new frocks sewn by Willow, scattered wildflower petals along the path to the community gathering place. Sarah, held by Martha Williamson, wore a tiny crown of daisies in her fine baby hair. And Willow, in a blue dress the color of a summer sky, felt none of the nervousness she'd expected. As she spoke her vows to Nathan, his steady gaze reflecting all the love and commitment she could ever hope for, she knew with absolute certainty that this new beginning was right. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with children running and playing as adults danced to fiddle music under lantern light. Nathan proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, guiding Willow through lively reels and gentle waltzes with equal skill. "Where did you learn to dance like this?" she asked during a momentary pause, breathless from exertion and happiness. Nathan grinned, a boyish expression that made him look years younger. "My mother insisted all her children learn proper social graces, even on our hardscrabble farm in Tennessee. Said we might be poor, but we'd never be uncultured." "She raised you well," Willow said softly, thinking how much she would have liked to meet the woman who had shaped this good man. "She would have loved you," Nathan replied, seeming to read her thoughts. "Almost as much as I do." The simple declaration warmed Willow through, chasing away the evening chill that had begun to settle over the valley. She leaned into him, allowing herself to savor this moment of perfect contentment. Later, after the girls had fallen asleep in the Williamsons' home where they would spend one last night, Nathan walked Willow to the small cabin that would become their family home the next day. Joseph and the other men had been working on it secretly for weeks, a wedding gift from the community. "It's not grand," Nathan said as they approached the neat structure, but it's sturdy and warm, and there's room to expand as needed. It's perfect, Willow assured him, touched by the thoughtfulness of their new friends and neighbors. Through the windows, she could see simple but comfortable furnishings: a table and chairs, a rocking chair by the hearth, beds visible in the rooms beyond. Nathan stopped on the porch, turning to face her in the moonlight. "Are you happy, Willow? Truly?" The question was asked with such earnest concern that Willow's heart swelled with affection. "Happier than I've been in a very long time," she answered honestly. "Even though this isn't the life you planned, a fugitive existence in a remote settlement with a husband you've known barely 2 months." Willow laughed softly at his blunt assessment. "Life rarely goes according to plan, Nathan. I've learned that lesson well these past years." She reached up to touch his cheek, a gesture of tenderness she was still growing accustomed to. "But sometimes what we find instead of our plans is better than anything we could have imagined." His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. "I'll make it better still, I promise you that. I know you will." Willow's gaze met his, steady and sure. "We both will, together." When Nathan lowered his head to kiss her, Willow met him halfway, her heart opening to this new love different from what she'd known before, but no less real for having grown from adversity rather than youthful dreams. They were building something precious here, not just a marriage or a family, but a future founded on mutual respect and genuine affection. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, stronger together than they had ever been apart. The next morning dawned bright and clear as Willow and Nathan collected the girls from the Williamsons to move into their new home. Abigail and Emma ran ahead, eager to explore every corner of the cabin, while Nathan carried Sarah, who babbled happily in his arms. As Willow followed, watching her new husband with her youngest daughter, a wave of contentment washed over her. Here, in this unlikely place with these extraordinary people, she had found not just safety but happiness, a happiness born not of perfect circumstances, but of love freely given and gratefully received. Jeremiah Nash had been wrong about so many things, but perhaps most fundamentally in his belief that a woman's worth was measured by her ability to produce sons. Willow's daughters were treasures beyond price, each unique and precious. And Nathan, bless him, saw that truth as clearly as she did. "Welcome home," he said as she joined him on the porch, his free arm wrapping around her shoulders. Home. Yes, that was exactly what this was: not just a place of shelter, but a haven of belonging. A place where no one would ever again be judged for something beyond their control. A place where love, not obligation, formed the foundation of family. "Home," Willow agreed, leaning into his embrace as they crossed the threshold together, stepping into their future as the Archer family. 5 years later, Willow stood on that same porch, watching Nathan teaching their son William to ride his first pony in the meadow beyond their expanded cabin. At 4 years old, the boy was the image of his father, with the same determined set to his jaw and thoughtful blue eyes. Near them, 8-year-old Sarah practiced her roping skills on a wooden post, while 10-year-old Emma sketched the scene in a journal. Abigail, now nearly 12 and growing into a thoughtful young woman, sat beside Willow, both of them shelling peas for dinner. "You ever miss Kelton, Mama?" Abigail asked suddenly, her hands never pausing in their work. Willow considered the question carefully. "I miss certain things: the mountains, the little creek where we used to picnic with your father. But no, I don't miss Kelton itself. Do you think grandfather ever forgave us for leaving?" The question pierced Willow's heart. Despite everything, Jeremiah Nash was still the girls' grandfather, their last living connection to Jacob. "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope that with time his anger softened." They had received word 3 years ago that Jeremiah had died, leaving his considerable property to a distant nephew. There had been no mention of his granddaughters in the will, a final rejection that had hurt more than Willow had expected. "I barely remember him," Abigail admitted. "Just that he was tall and his voice was scary sometimes." "You were very young," Willow said, grateful that her daughter's memories of Jeremiah's cruelty had faded with time. "William asked me yesterday if Papa is his real father," Abigail continued, her tone casual though the question was anything but. "I told him of course Papa is his father. That's right, isn't it?" Willow smiled, touched by her daughter's protective instinct. "Yes, that's right. Nathan is William's father in every way that matters, just as he is a father to you girls." "But we had another father first," Abigail persisted. "William didn't." "That's true. Your father Jacob loved you very much, and he would be so proud of the young ladies you're becoming." Willow set aside her peas to take Abigail's hand. "Having Nathan as your father now doesn't diminish Jacob's place in your life or in your heart. There's room for both." Abigail nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "I'm glad we found Papa, or that he found us." "So am I, sweetheart." "More than I can say." Their conversation was interrupted by William's excited shout as he completed a circuit of the meadow on his pony, Nathan walking alongside with the lead rope. Sarah cheered her brother's achievement, while Emma looked up from her sketching long enough to give an approving nod. Nathan caught Willow's eye across the distance, his smile as warm and true as it had been on their wedding day. She returned it, her heart full to bursting with love for this family they had built together. Life in Harmony Valley hadn't always been easy. There had been difficult seasons, drought years when crops failed, a measles outbreak that nearly claimed Emma's life, the time when a spring flash flood destroyed half the settlement's homes. But through it all, the community had endured, supporting one another through hardship as readily as they celebrated each other's joys. And through it all, Nathan had been her steadfast partner, keeping every promise he'd made that day by the river when he'd asked for her hand. He cherished all their children equally, showing no preference for his biological son over his adopted daughters. He respected Willow's opinions and abilities, valuing her contributions to their family and community. And most precious of all, he loved her with a constancy that had healed the wounds of her past and opened her heart to possibilities she'd never imagined. "Papa's teaching me to ride tomorrow," Sarah announced proudly, having abandoned her roping practice to join them on the porch. "He says I'm ready for a real horse instead of a pony." "Did he now?" Willow raised an eyebrow, making a mental note to discuss this with Nathan later. Sarah, while fearless, was still small for her age. "Don't worry, Mama," Sarah grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "He said you'd need convincing, so he picked out the gentlest mare in the valley." Willow laughed, unsurprised that her husband had anticipated her concern. After 5 years of marriage, they had developed an almost intuitive understanding of each other's thoughts. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the valley, Nathan and William returned from their riding lesson. The boy ran ahead to show his sisters the special riding gloves Nathan had made for him, while Nathan climbed the porch steps to join Willow. "Successful lesson?" she asked as he bent to kiss her cheek. "Very. He's a natural." Nathan settled beside her on the bench, his arm automatically finding its place around her shoulders. "Though I had to promise Sarah she'd get her turn tomorrow, that girl doesn't miss a thing. So I heard." Willow leaned into his embrace, savoring the familiar comfort of his presence. "You apparently also promised her a real horse." Nathan had the grace to look sheepish. "The gentlest mare in the valley," he assured her, "and I'll be right beside her every moment." Willow pretended to consider this, though they both knew she would relent. Nathan had proven himself an excellent teacher, patient but thorough, and Sarah had inherited her mother's determination along with her father's boldness. "I suppose it's time," she conceded. "She's been begging for months." Nathan's smile was triumphant but tempered with understanding. "It's hard to watch them grow up so fast, isn't it?" "Sometimes," Willow agreed, watching as all four children now played an impromptu game of tag in the twilight. "But mostly, I'm grateful we get to witness it together." Nathan's arm tightened around her, his voice dropping to a murmur meant for her ears alone. "Every day with you and our children is a gift, Willow, one I never take for granted." After dinner, once the children were bathed and tucked into bed with stories and goodnight kisses, Willow and Nathan sat before the fire in their comfortable main room. These quiet evening hours were precious to them, both a time to connect as husband and wife beyond their roles as parents. "I had a letter from Sheriff Miller today," Nathan mentioned, setting aside the book he'd been reading. Willow looked up from her mending, surprised. "After all this time? What did he want?" "He's retiring, moving to his daughter's place in California." Nathan reached for the letter on the side table. "But he wanted us to know something. Apparently, just before he died, Jeremiah confessed to him that Jacob had never expressed disappointment about not having a son. In fact, according to Miller, Jacob wrote to his father regularly about how proud he was of his beautiful family of women." Tears sprang to Willow's eyes. "I knew it," she whispered. "In my heart, I always knew Jacob loved our girls exactly as they were." "Jeremiah was projecting his own disappointment," Nathan said gently. "Miller says he seemed regretful at the end, though too proud to reach out directly." Willow absorbed this information, feeling an unexpected sense of closure. "Thank you for telling me. It means more than I can say to have that confirmation." Nathan set the letter aside and moved to kneel before her chair, taking her hands in his. "You never needed confirmation that you were a wonderful mother, Willow. You've done nothing wrong, not then, not now." The words echoed those he'd spoken years ago in her small house in Kelton, when he'd first defended her against Jeremiah's cruelty. They had been a lifeline then. Now they were a cherished affirmation of the life they'd built together. "I know," she said, smiling through her tears. "But it's still good to hear." Nathan reached up to brush a tear from her cheek, his touch infinitely gentle. "I love you, Willow Archer, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "And I love you," she replied, the words as true and natural now as breathing. "For saving us when we needed saving and for building this beautiful life with us afterward." "You saved yourself," Nathan corrected her. "I just provided transportation." Willow laughed, as he'd intended, the momentary melancholy dispelled. Always so modest. "Hardly," he grinned, rising to pull her to her feet and into his embrace. "I'm quite proud of having won the heart of the most remarkable woman in the territories." As his lips found hers in a kiss that still held the power to make her heart race after 5 years of marriage, Willow reflected on the journey that had brought them here from a chance meeting in a general store to this rich, full life surrounded by love and community. Jeremiah Nash had been wrong about many things, but perhaps his greatest error had been in believing that family was defined by blood alone, by sons carrying on a name. True family, Willow had discovered, was forged in love and commitment, in the daily choice to stand by one another through joy and sorrow alike. Here, in Nathan's arms, with their children sleeping peacefully nearby and a future bright with possibility stretching before them, Willow Nash Archer had found her truest home not in a place, but in the hearts of those who loved her exactly as she was. And in that, she had done nothing wrong at all.